Welcome. Today is Daily Cyber episode 290. Hopefully everyone's having a great week. I know it's been a busy week for myself. A lot's going on. It's kind of funny talking to different colleagues. It's been a busy week so far, and we're only going into Tuesday. So hopefully you're doing well. Today's Daily Cyber is going to be really interesting. I have Ryan Kirkley on the show, co-founder and CEO of Global Settlement, institutional settlement network for tokenization assets, stablecoins, and cross-border payments. Before GSX, Ryan founded Krypton Labs, Miami-based venture studios, accelerator for AI and blockchain startups. He's also ventured a partnership and an investor in quantum software, predictive markets, and blockchain projects through roles of Alder Funds, Singularity VC, and many other. Like Ryan's career, he's built exciting multiple ventures spanning blockchain, apparel, machine learning, just so much more. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Good afternoon, Ryan. How's things going?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Not bad. Like you said, it's a busy week. I'm sure you've been having one. We were talking a little bit before.
Always. It's there's never a day off.
So how's your week been going so far?
It's been good. I mean, I think it's been a very hectic week in general in the crypto community, off of some cybersecurity attacks that happened over the weekend, compromising major liquidity flows and risking, quite frankly, the market. And so it's been very busy for everybody, and a lot of people, banks and institutions, calling to see just how exposed they are to kind of what's occurred this weekend.
So let's talk about that, because I know we are just briefly talking about that, about kind of security in the market. Go through that compromise. I know we kind of briefly talked about it. Like, what was the impact? What really happened? And some people might know about it, some people might not.
Yeah, so I mean, to give it kind of a short synopsis, what happened this weekend was $290 million was drained over a compromised verifier on the it was on Kelp DAO, which is part of the Avalanche ecosystem. But more importantly, it happened via Layer 0, which is the bridge that is basically connecting all of the different digital assets, all the digitized stablecoins, currencies. It is the most used bridge, if not Chainlink, but the two are neck and neck. And to see this occur, where we saw RPC infrastructure fail, which is the actual validator, creates a massive loss of trust, and we've seen massive amounts of liquidity exit the DeFi ecosystems overnight off of this concern.
Right. Now, with that, was it actually like a 0-day compromise, or was it a misconfiguration?
Yeah, so it will remain to be seen. Is the correct answer, right? This was unusual even for crypto standards. 3 different parties, all 3 blamed each other. That said, is what we do know is that this was a long coordinated attack that has taken place over 5 years, essentially.
Oh, wow.
In terms of its original setup time, but it was a RPC node in the Layer 0 infrastructure DVN that relies on the swapping of like binaries. That ultimately was the failure point. And so they had 2 bad nodes. Whether or not that means their entire ecosystem is facing compromise, or just the targeted ecosystems facing compromise, it remains a little bit to be seen. But so far, the answers that have been given publicly have led to a very large downstream risk to occur until we have better answers.
Okay, yeah, because I was reading like just before we got into the stream, because I remember you mentioned just before, and I was trying to catch up. They were saying like the Kelp DOA didn't have a single point of trust. There was potentially a denial of service attack, and as part of this attack, which then interfered with the communication, I guess the handshake, right, at that point. And then the attackers manipulated that and fraudulent cross-chain transactions. So that's what I was reading, right? So I don't know how accurate that is.
I think kind of cut through. What happened is they for purposes of the conversation, poisoned two of the validators, and then they used DDoS attacks, basically overwhelmed the rest of the validators,
right,
until they knew that this would be routed between the bad ones.
Right.
And so why this is something that like, and not to blame names, but like why something like a layer 0 or any bridge protocol really can't escape this is this idea that as soon as you're using a bridge, that third-party custody of assets comes into play.
Right.
And there's just this massive vulnerability because what they did was it was a coordinated DDoS on the whole infrastructure to make sure that the isolated bad nodes or bad infrastructure was able to come through. Now, I will say is, hey, layer 0's terms of service, docs, etc., do highly suggest that these things should be operating in a different manner,
Right.
i.e. they want to have multiple failure points, things like that. So layer 0's response is, hey, not our fault, but at the same time, it is the core vulnerability of layer 0. They could have multiple failure points if they had multiple bad nodes. That would fail.
So in this conversation, to kind of going that, one of the things we were going to talk about was like the gaps in the current security models. Is this a current gap that is known, or is this like a 0-day no one was aware of it?
Yeah, so I would say there's been a few of us shouting from the rooftops for a very long time into an empty void.
Right.
And it's on the concept of bridges, which in crypto is how everything moves. And candidly speaking, they've always been a vulnerability. Because layer 0 and Chainlink had such high success in the early days, it's been really hard to broach that industry from a, hey, we're coming in to change how this operates. Zero proofs provide quite a bit more safety. The idea that you could have attestation or direct read write without touching the asset itself means that there's never a third-party vulnerability. And I think ultimately that's the structural vulnerability of a bridge, is that it's external trust consumptions. It leaves a single point of failure in that transaction, even if there's a million internal rings that should stop bad actors or stop poisoning, etc. But it's still a config level of point of failure, right?
So how would they improve this?
So for us, I mean, I do run a company that says, hey, all bridges are bad and there's no such thing as a safe bridge. And so for us, we look to basically creating direct fast pass corridors, like we call them Concord lanes, that allow for trusted institutions, so private blockchains, to directly read write to each other by verifying through like an identity account field, etc. For decentralized fields, this is where zero knowledge proofs and being able to prove the current state of the old blockchain, then mathematically solve it to the other chain and execute the transaction in real time come into play. Rather than constantly trying to actually move the asset, it's a simple mint and burn on each side with a proof that validates that each side participated in the transaction properly. That way, if it failed, nothing would move. But if they get the proof it's successful, both sides move accordingly. And that's probably the safest way to kind of upgrade this. And when you look at like layer 0 announcing a new blockchain, things like that, it is definitely with eyes towards that path, but significantly far away from it actually occurring.
I guess like something that we were all looking at is that the zero kind of trust with mutual, validation across both handshakes, right? That you say who you are, you say who you are. We've now confirmed that before any action is taken.
Yeah, when I think this is it's the ultimate challenge with DeFi versus like TradFi is, it's one thing when you're moving $5, $10, $100, $1,000 even. When you start to see, $290 million moving, you start to see billions moving in remittances, etc. You almost need to have that trusted authority that is the other side and the receiver and the handshake, so to speak. And so there is going to be, I think, some arguments in the space of in favor, maybe a little bit more centralization and a little bit less on the decentralization. Always good, because it does open this up. And I mean, this isn't the first hack. This is, one of billions of dollars in bridge hacks and exploits that have occurred over the years, from validator compromises, smart contract access controls, verification bypasses, and then DVN and RPC poisoning. And so clearly there's been a lot of ways to be able to exploit these third-party vulnerabilities.
Right. And with that being said, something like, and we've got new people on here, who would be impacted by this? So if we're talking this, there's a lot of, talking about organizations and structural and configuration, and then of course the blockchain and communication, but who would be actually impacted through this, CALP DAO?
Yes. So at least on this one, the immediate impact is a little bit more isolated. Unfortunately, Avalanche has isolated the keys and did an unprecedented rollback in the sense that they're basically freezing the funds and trying to recover all. The challenge to this, though, is Avalanche is a restaking platform. Kelp DAO is a restaking platform. So basically, you have people that are lending and borrowing on crypto on top
Right.
of crypto in these ecosystems. And when you see a failure point in the hundreds of millions, sometimes that causes a flash pan reaction that then takes out multiple layers of blockchain. I mean, that's almost every big crypto crash we've seen
Right.
has come from one failure leading to liquidations leading downstream. And so while I do think we avoided a lot of the financial concerns, now we're at the point of how many different chains rely on bridges. So there's 13 chains that literally have this exact mechanism that are vulnerable. I mean, we're talking over 20 billion or so in assets in that regard. Then we have everyone that uses bridges, period, as a workaround solution. And there's a reason why most institutions haven't gone down the bridge route yet. It's because exactly this. There's no way for them to guarantee safety, which means that they're very skeptical to use. That said, is you have every crypto exchange, you have every major wallet provider, you have every major crypto holder. This has been the way to move crypto across different ecosystems 24/7. If you're moving money from the United States to Asia, you're probably at some point converting from your USDC to USDT, and you may be going from ETH to Tron as a blockchain. When you do that, you're functionally using a bridge, and that is once again this vulnerability. And so almost every crypto user, I think right now, has a level of exposure that they should be concerned about.
And then what should they do at this point? Like what I'm hearing right now is like the house is on fire, right? Like the stock exchange is going, everyone must sell, get your money under your mattress kind of thing, right? That's what I'm hearing. I know that's not true, but
I mean, I view this much like Versal in that regard. And how that hack played out over the weekend as well is, there was a moment in time where I think everybody felt like the house was on fire.
Right.
Hey, there's 24 to 48 hours of kind of an unknown certainty. Now, the benefit with these kind of attacks and a DDoS attack of this magnitude, it's expensive.
Right.
It's not going to be able to target a small user today. It does provide a vulnerability to the small user, but it does. Hey, in the next 48, the last 48 hours, we were waiting to see will Avalanche roll back the chain and do something unprecedented, taking a decentralized chain and taking custody. They did. Right. So while it reduces the financial impact and it's kind of that too big to fail mantra, it now exposes the entire integrity of Avalanche in the sense of, okay, I think most users are going to be fine with the fact that they voted to stop this. This was a too big to fail moment. But in the other sense is, hey, that goes against the core ethos of crypto and the DeFi culture. And so, I think House is slightly put out in the sense of immediate concerns, but for a lot of blockchains and a lot of organization groups and financial entities, it's a big concern right now because moving these assets now, if you're moving large sums, you have to be pretty concerned.
So now my question comes down to, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is the quantum aspect of this now, because I'm having conversations how quantum computing, especially on the threat actor side, now can be exposing more vulnerabilities, faster DDoSs, and now the impact can be now 10 times 10x, right? So you get a DDoS hack that takes maybe a month to execute, you might be talking about hours, right? And then it's distributed across multiple systems, and now you're getting all this while they're now going through reconnaissance, looking at vulnerabilities, testing the exterior, like doing all that, all like within real time.
Exactly. Well, and I think we went from the moment of originally it was 500,000 qubits required to break kind of this crypto elliptic curves. Now it was 1 million, and then the latest Google study is now looking at under 100,000, right? And that's when everyone started to panic, because we've had demonstrable commercial grade achieving 10 to 20,000.
Right.
And we're talking breaking the entire encryption of, ECDSA and RSA, right? Like once you're into that world, it's okay, where can I get maximum financial gains? And that comes into crypto.
Right.
If I was a bad actor, I'd be opening up old wallets constantly right now. I wouldn't even be worrying about DDoS attacks. I'd just be breaking chains if I had a quantum computer. And so I think that's the concern right now, is we're seeing a lot of old wallets at 4 to 8 a quarter now randomly activate, randomly sell into ways you wouldn't expect them to sell, whether it's going into kind of the money laundering type of chains or exchanges, or it's going through traditional North Korean routes.
Right.
It's getting a little concerning in that we're seeing a lot of these start to wake up, and it's been happening over the last 6 quarters. And so there is some arguments to be made that it's already here. And I certainly think when we start to look at the number of major attacks that we're at an unprecedented 3-month stretch of cybersecurity attacks. And maybe it's all just, hey, it's just they're getting better and like AI is making it easier. But I have a feeling there's probably a bit more powerful processing happening somewhere. And we're seeing all these attacks focused largely on data and not financial, which tells me it's AI training models, and that gets into geopolitical conversations. And
Right.
if you're a quantum computer sitting behind something somewhere is quite likely.
Well, I think it's also the testing ground, right?
It
kind
is.
of put it in context. I think it's the testing ground to see what they can do and how can they compromise. Especially, I come from an IR background, so it's kind of looking at how can we compromise like the typical commercial business right now, from anyone from mom and pop shop to Fortune 100. We're going to start testing our phishing campaigns, business email compromises, and network intrusion, things along that line to see how far we can go. Right.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. Like I've had several people on the stream, and we talked about like nation states and the backing, the financial of like having them as your backers to support the infrastructure the threat actors have, right? And then I know from threat actors kind of going through it, like the millions and millions of dollars they make in ransomware events, right? So you can kind of look at, they have the financial backing, they have no restrictions. They're not like the security people of us where we have budgets, we have processes, we have compliance, we have managers, we have organizational structure. They just kind of go like, it's like, okay, we need to get this tool, this application, let's go, right? Who has it available that we can use?
Absolutely. And so from an availability standpoint, the answer is pretty limited. There is, 3 chains out there that I would say are actually quantum resistant, and there's a lot of people that claim they are. So, I mean, to start with, I mean, it's the NIST PQC standards is a good next step. So crystal lithium signatures or MLDSA, that is necessary. Now, most chains can't support it, whether it's from a mathematical standpoint, a block size and how much data has to be transacted, or it's simply how they structured their blockchain before. And there's a lot of really uncomfortable conversations about this. I mean, Bitcoin, I have reviewed probably 30 upgrade proposals. I've yet to find one where the math around the quantum actually works. Okay. And so while they say, oh, we have ideas, they're just ideas. Right. And so what we talk to banks about, what we talk to governments about is pick a natively quantum resistant blockchain. Right. There's nothing you can say that will be quantum proof forever, especially if we start getting into the millions of qubits, right? It's going to become an evolving world of chaos. That said is, there's a lot of ways to protect the assets and protect the encryption flows there. I mean, what we're seeing right now is, that concern over, harvest now, decrypt later. And how does data policy held? How are financial records held? How are passwords held? And then, what are you doing with like long-lived secrets and kind of the inventory management side? And so that's where, like, for us being a quantum resistant chain, we're hyper aware of the cybersecurity requirements required of just our internal actors. Right. And making sure that we are keeping, all of our codes, all of our keys, everything offline, off note takers, off AI, off any cloud infrastructure, et cetera. Because the moment it hits, there's no chance it's gone. Right. And so that's really where we're looking at is, doing this up front, and then for everybody, it's go hybrid now. The signing structure can't just be classical signs. You have to be picking and choosing. I think that's we're seeing crypto start to panic. Right. But unfortunately, for most of these chains, they just simply aren't ready.
Right. It's kind of interesting, like as you talked about, like the technology, right? It's always evolving, right? The infrastructure, the applications, the coding always has to evolve, right? Especially as we get AI is evolving, quantum computers evolving, so they have to keep up with the times. I almost think of it as like Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster didn't think about Netflix, and no one's going to watch movies like that, and they're going to stream. They're going to want a DVD. And now where's Blockbusters? I think there's only one left, right?
Yeah, when I think a lot of people had this like illusion that if the quantum happens, they'll go after banks first, they'll go after governments first. But the reality is that crypto got too big for itself. And if I go after JP Morgan, they're going to close their entire online banking system. Will it be annoying to everybody? Absolutely. But they do have a paper ledger system, and they do have, 1028-bit encryption and 2048 even possibly, that they can go and basically send manual messages one by one, do the accounting the hard way, and go kind of old school. Whereas crypto, you could have losses in the hundreds of billions of dollars overnight before people even realize what happened. And that's the big difference, is there's a lot more to siphon realistically in any Q-day model that you kind of play out.
True. No, that's very true. Any other gaps that you can see right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bridging is a gap. Yeah. Quantum resistant is a gap. The signature is a gap. The next gap that needs to be talked about, though, is the centralization of kind of the exchanges and where people are going on ramp and off ramp. And I think that's always been the problem in crypto is, do you trust the actors on every side, and how do you know which actors to trust?
Right.
Do I know, like, if I have my money on Coinbase, do I know that they're secure? Maybe, but like, I probably don't know what actions they're taking internally. I don't know how they host their wallets. And it gets incredibly complex, right? We're trusting people with things that can be hacked that easy. Kelp DAO had a very long security section of their white paper and documents. Did people read it? Did people realize there was a single point of failure? Maybe.
Right.
But
did they understand it?
Yeah, I mean, most users are not going to be as complex to understand this. They're not going to understand, what type of signature is most resistant. They're not going to understand, the gate of the system. They're not going to understand which chains support rollbacks and don't. From do I keep assets on? And then there's the governance conversations. Like, if Bitcoin got hacked tomorrow and you needed to roll it back, you need 70% of people to validate that they want the rollback.
Right.
That's the miners. The miners may not be holding any Bitcoin when this happens, though. Why would they want to roll back? It would destroy the integrity of the chain.
Right.
And so it's like that's the problem, is you might have competing governance decisions around this, which I think is also a pretty big concern.
Yeah, it's kind of scary too, right? Because I mean, when I look at the market, I mean, you have all different people investing into crypto right now. People that have long-term knowledge and experience of the industry, blockchain, understand cryptography and crypto investments, DeFi investments, and coins, and like all that. To people are just trying to get in to hold something because they think Ethereum, right, Bitcoin, or anything is going to be something that they should hold just in case, because they saw it right. So I think it's sad, like, and I'm saying this on a user base, I think it's sad because the people that are going into that could lose their money quickly, it's pretty high, and they just don't understand it, right? They don't understand the technology.
It's they don't understand the technology, and even more so, you start getting into these, RIAs and retirement accounts that are managing this, and it gets even really scary, just in the sense that you're now having actors on actors exposing people to things. And I doubt, a mom and pop that worked for 40 years is asking their Kansas RIA advisor specifically about how the crypto is being held inside of the vehicle they invested in.
Right.
And I can tell you right now, a lot of these digital asset treasuries do not have a chief security officer. We're spun up out of the blue, are reliant on very centralized holders that create massive risk to one particular place. And I think that could ultimately be a very dangerous spot on the entire equation.
Well, I think the one challenge too, onto your point, is you don't know who you can trust. I was talking to someone online just recently, and they were saying, hey, I know an investor, and you can take your crypto and go to them, and they can invest, and they'll run with it and all that. I'm like, red flag, like, already, right? Why would I give my crypto to someone else to actually go and invest it? Like, hold on. Like, and then when I started to do the deep dive, open source intelligence on the person, I realized all their profiles were just created. Their website was just created like a month ago. Like, everything was just spun up. Like, okay, like, all red flags. Who's this person? And you kind of see, like, I was watching on their social medias, cars and bling and things along that line. I'm like, yep, no, not even close, right? Like, and then the one thing I want to say to people that are watching this, like, you got to do your due diligence. Like, if you're playing in this market and you're starting out with, and I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars, but if you're starting with thousands of dollars, like, you got to go slow. You got to understand it. You have to have the professionals like Ryan, or someone that you can talk to understand it before you invest it, because you can lose. And now I've heard this years ago where people lost thousands of dollars. They put some of their life savings in it because they thought, I'm just going to do it, and all of a sudden something happened, right?
I mean, I have a good friend that, I been in the space for years, and going through and trusted entities, trusted groups, even a verified passport of a, important financial institution kind of person, right? Like, all these things checked out boxes, an AI on a Zoom call that was like a real face that looked like the guy. And then you get into like the final stages, and it's like, they might send you a link to click.
Right.
Instantly, $300,000 is gone because you clicked the link into your wallet, right? Like, or you scanned a QR code, or all these little simple things. Now it gets even scarier when you start talking like, does someone 0-day your phone? Does someone get into your phone through other actions, whether it's an app download or a photo, etc.? But all of a sudden, you're exposing yourself to massive vulnerability. The other side of crypto that is also can be scary if you don't have a third party managing your assets is, like, does someone just show up with a gun and say, transfer all your crypto to me? And so what you see is like most people in crypto, like, like for me, I don't have actual custody of my assets, right? Like I make sure that I have multi-sig approval. Anyone that wants to come after me, good luck. I can't do anything, right? Like it wouldn't be possible. Whereas, other people, they've been held at gunpoint, they've been killed, they've been, tortured over this. And it's a terrifying world when you start to think about, this is why banks exist. This is why people stopped putting money under their mattresses in the 1800s was, home burglaries were a thing. And I think that's the thing that we also have to kind of adjust for is, sovereignty and control versus safety. And that's kind of always the balancing act that I think we play in the space.
100%. I think the one I remember, there was an influencer, and he was on social media and talking about how much cryptocurrency and, bringing the cars and the money and doing all that. And yeah, I think it was the Russian, from what I understand, people can correct me if I'm wrong, they see this, I think it was some kind of Russian group went after them and then beat him up, took his cryptocurrency. And then he was like, you kind of learn, like the Kardashians, I'll use that as an example. They got robbed too, right? With all their jewelry. Like, it's just something you got to be very careful of. Like you said, having layers of in-depth security controls that, even if it did come to that point, it's like, there's nothing you guys can do. Like,
I say this is personally, I probably experience anywhere between 100 to 300 attacks on my socials, on my personal stuff, on my accounts per week.
Right.
Now that may be because they're going, and decent following on socials, have, a couple 100,000 followers across all platforms. And obviously that becomes kind of a target on your back. But then you go a second layer and it's okay, they're going after me, but then they create fake profiles of me. They create fake accounts of me. And because I'm known and I'm safe in the industry, they reach out saying, hey, want to catch up, want us to capture a meeting. And so then you get all these different failure points. And I think that's what we're really seeing in crypto is a lot of complex social engineering.
Right.
Even if we just remove the infrastructure vulnerabilities, a lot of this is social engineering. They hack your Telegram and then they go and message all your contacts for a quick catch-up call. And the moment you click that, you've just downloaded something onto your phone that can get into your wallets, drain you, et cetera.
Right.
And so I think we're really seeing a switch where it's like, hey, I don't click links anymore. I make sure every link someone sends me goes through a scanner and I don't have my wallet on my phone. I don't have my wallet on my primary laptop. These things exist in devices where that's the only purpose for them. And that's, I think, something that, not many people are going to do.
I think that's becoming more prevalent as we get more into the technology age. I mean, I'm seeing this more on my side as you have infrastructures and businesses and corporations. It's like fully supported by IT, desktop, laptops, smart devices. I mean, they can't live without it. If they went, dark with no electricity, to them survive in business would be very complicated and hard to kind of go pen and paper for a week, right? Even a couple hours, some of them, right? Because a lot of it is software based. So what you're saying is, I think is started in the industry, is now expanding. I think it's becoming more challenging because now the tools on the threat actor side are growing and becoming more, because I remember, social engineering. Like you used to, hi, Mr. Kirkley. You're like, okay, this is a phishing campaign. Why no one calls me that? I know that calls me that. What is this? Misspelled names, signatures different from the email, like all that stuff. Now it's not like that because they're putting it through AI. It's now profiling you. It's you looking at your verbiage, looking at what you do, your activities, and it's saying, hey, I know, hey, Ryan, you go to golf. Here's actually a golf promotion that we're having today. And you're like, now it's close to something you'd actually click on.
Well, and I think this is where AI gets scary, and also just like the maturity of these hackers and everything is, I liken it to when, doing security work and like government work. Yeah. Okay. Like very, very, very locked down, very, you had a separate authenticator device, you had multiple key cards, you had multiple QSAs, like there was a lot of different protections on things. Now it's like, if you work in a crypto organization, everybody has to have that.
Right.
Anybody that has access to even a GitHub has to have it, a Git book, anyone that can publish, anyone that and so now all of a sudden the organizational infrastructure that needs for security has gone up. Then you start to expand it further down the line though. It's everybody in their email probably has bought crypto from Coinbase, probably because Coinbase leaked all of their emails, probably has now gotten emails from Coinbase TM with a to log in, click here.
Yeah, there you're right. You just dropped for a second.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's
but where'd I drop out at?
The Coinbase TM.
Yeah, so they get a very real looking email with a domain match. It hits the main inbox and it's click to verify your login credentials. And if this wasn't you, report that someone else is attempting to log in. And the moment you click it, you're gone.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the kind of thing that we're seeing is AI has just enabled very smart actors to spend a lot of money going after people at even smaller dollar values. And Mythos is particularly terrifying about this.
I would actually say the opposite. I think that's not a very smart one. I think they're making it ones that are script kiddies easier to now do it. Because again, the guys that were smart had this down, had the profiles, did the open source intelligence, had the profiles created, knew the attack vectors. Kind of now it's like, hey, I get an attack package. Hey, I want to hack company ABC. Who's the CEO? Tell me that. Who's the best to go after? Go AI, and it gives you a whole profile and attack. Well,
I think it certainly adds to the dumb hackers' abilities, but I think even more importantly is the smart hackers' abilities become 10 or 100-fold.
Right.
Agentic AI allows for 24/7 attacks. You can literally program AIs now to run DDoS for you rather than you having to manage it. Now, all of a sudden, you can have 40 devices simultaneously running different types of attacks. You can have, I look at our company, every time I hire someone and they post on LinkedIn, within a day, I have 20 emails in my spam saying, change my banking details, please. And it's like, it's that kind of stuff. Like that didn't exist before.
Right.
Now with AI, there's just programs that automatically run and they send out the phishing campaign, et cetera.
Yeah.
News is I think it's going to make us a little bit numb to it in the sense that we start to like just any of this stuff over email and over text becomes, persona non grata.
Right.
Anytime I do bank transfers or even crypto transfers, it's a Zoom call minimum or in person even if we can. And we make it done that way. And so I think that's where we're going to go is, there's going to become an era of, I think, in-person security, because that's going to become kind of the next major gateway.
Well, are you concerned? And because you mentioned Zoom calls, are you concerned about deepfakes?
100%. A great example, actually, probably one of my favorite stories in crypto, in my crypto lore is, I was working at a large crypto fund, very well known to be able to broker some large movement of crypto. This was 2022. Michael Jordan had just sold the Hornet, 23, one of those years, but Michael Jordan had just sold the Hornets. And I get an outreach from a friend of a family office. He reached out to my friend. My friend introduced me, knew the friend for a long time. And the profile had been around for 12 years out of Europe, major family office group, and was like, hey, we have a group in Atlanta that is looking for Bitcoin. Any chance you guys know anybody? Atlanta group comes in, and then all of a sudden, we go through 4 or 5 meetings, much negotiations, start to figure out, okay, I have an idea who this is. Get on a Zoom call. It's a deep fake Michael Jordan.
Right.
I mean, and you would have thought everything was correct at that point. On a Zoom call, you might never see my hands. It's not weird that I'm like just shoulder length and my face being showed.
100%.
And so we got all this. We got the passports. We got all this information. And it wasn't until the very end, famous person, I saw a birth date that was wrong.
Right.
It was off by 2 years. Now, fortunately, because I'm a fan of basketball, I noticed this.
Right.
We were 30 minutes, maybe at most, away from sending almost $100 million as a first tranche.
Right.
Had negotiated, had escrow at a bank, but like, who knows how they were going to get us in that interim, because we had protection set up, but maybe they had a bad link, maybe they knew they were going to route it through a bad wallet.
Yeah.
Anything, but it's that's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
That was 3 years ago. I can't imagine what's happening now.
Oh, and with the AI video creation editing tools, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's nuts. I mean, it's I can make social media posts where no one knows it's AI at this point, and like that's crazy, right? I could be at every single major event in the world and you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I remember watching one when they first had TikTok. They had the troopers from like Star Wars. They had like the gorilla, like all these ones, and they were funny, right? They're kind of doing their logs, but they were funny. But I was like, this is AI. I can't imagine where this is going to go. And then I heard there was a couple meetings that people came in and they were AI, and they got they were deep fake, and people were talking about transferring money and things like that, like you're talking about. And unless there was a few call outs that they made that that person didn't know, and then he knew right away. But like you said, they were 20 minutes into the meeting. Like,
I mean, you're almost at the point now where if you're doing a virtual interaction, you have to say, show me your compute screen, right? Like I need to see every application that's running.
Right.
I think that's the short-term answer, but even that can be faked. And so it's like, you know, as we get to this point, it's getting to the point where, you know, just like coding interviews where you're always worried about, is someone using AI or tools behind the screen to fake that they know how to code? And, you know, now we have applications and software they download, so they go in, but they don't want to download it in the first place because they're scared that we're going to hack them because we're a fake company or something, right?
Right.
And so you're getting to this point of just trust on neither side has trust.
Right.
The proof of humanity is going to become a really important thing. I mean, that's one of the things like we're building right now is an identity solution that quite literally is proof of humanity across ecosystems. Because how do I prove that I am the human that I say I am? And how do you know? And what are the factors? And like that's going to be really, really challenging as agentic AI really takes off.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it, and I think it's concerning right now. I think most companies, if they're not keeping their ear to the ground right now about quantum computers and AI and how it's doing, I think they're going to have an event, and then it's going to be like the house is on fire. Now they have to change everything. Like now it's the point where they could have done it strategically over month to month. You know, every 18 months started to build out the security, the controls, you know, look at higher levels of quantum encryption, things like that. But then it's going to be an event, and then they're now going to go, what do we need to do? And some security company is going to come in and say, you need to spend all this money, you need to do all this. And they're going to go like, how do I do that?
And the reality, if there's a Q-Day event, you don't have the time to upgrade. Like let's say banking, because blockchain's my world. Let's say you built on a non-quantum resistant, and I won't name names because I don't like calling out competitors or anything, but you built on a non-quantum resistant blockchain, right? The reality is it goes down because of Q-Day.
Right.
Quickest upgrade timeline for any blockchain is 90 to 180 days. You can't wait that long. Right. You're exposing yourself and all assets at the entire time waiting until that goes back up.
Right.
So you're going to rip everything out and do a migration forced to a new chain overnight. And I mean, that's something like we quite literally are building for is, you know, how do we do overnight migrations from other chains when Q-Day occurs?
Right.
Because I know what's going to happen is my phone's going to start ringing 24/7 off the hook globally as this occurs, because there is 2 to 3 options in the space to be able to kind of upgrade quickly and bring your data in. And, you know, the timelines to go live will be 24, 48 hours. People can't have their banking down for days, weeks, etc. The world will stop.
Right.
You'll have chaos, you'll have violence. And so that's where it's, you know, I think there's going to be and that's just one industry. That's going to be across every industry.
For sure.
It's going to be rapidly going. And I mean, you know, you got Google saying it's 2029. The US government said 2035. Germany just issued a 2028 guidance. It's only getting shorter. And with AI, I think it's only more and more likely we figure out ways to solve the qubit problem faster and faster as AI assists. And it's like at some point this is going to happen. And I think, you know, my answer to everybody is quantum encryption and quantum security has to be a 2026 number one priority, not a 2027, not a 2028, because once it happens, even if you're halfway through an upgrade, they have everything at that point. You know, everything's harvested, everything's done, and you know, no amount of upgrades is going to fix it. You're going to have to reset.
Right. So in that being said, what are you recommending organizations to look at when it comes to quantum risk and the quantum infrastructure?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first and foremost, it's how are you encrypting? And this is the crystal lithium signature. This is breaking out of kind of traditional encryption. This is blockchain. There are. I mean, it's candidly, I think there's not many options that there is available in the space across. Now, this blockchain can be file storage. There's quantum resistant file storage blockchains. This can be transaction layer. This can be all the way over to how are we encrypting our own data and our customers' data. But the reality is until people start to take, you know, this data harvesting seriously, people aren't realizing it. I think there's geopolitical actors hacking purely for AI training models and inference data. Right. And I mean, at large scales, I mean, the Versal attack, it's weird that there was no financial losses that have been reported so far. Tells me it was a data play, right? And now, will there be secondary effects with financial losses? Absolutely. But more than likely, the original intent was to scrape all the data. So now all of a sudden you can train a model on it. Right. And you start to play that out over and over again. And so I think it's encrypt everything. it's 2FA, it's proof of humanity. It is moving into, as weird as this sounds, I think you have to move into the ability to run offline unless you are fully and entirely quantum resistant.
Right. And I think that's something that people want to know is kind of the layers of quantum, because I mean, you look at, and you're talking about specifically data in motion, data at rest, right? Data in use,
Yep.
like all those areas of data can be exposed. So the question comes down to like, how are you going to wrap quantum around those different areas where data is, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like, give you context of how it works on our blockchain. Everything is sent so that we have a couple of different ways that we provide quantum security. First, we use proofs at every layer we can. And we use this through lattice protocol, lattice transfer protocol, which is basically this idea that, you know, we're solving multitudes at once and being able to just factor up and down. And that already makes the encryption part that much harder.
Right.
Then on each side of the transaction, to provide the answer to the proof that is created through that lattice transfer protocol, we have a crystal lithium signature. Now, crystal lithium signatures are estimated to be safe up to right now around 200,000 qubits. Now,
okay.
Again, everything's a guess until we actually have it and are able to test. But, you know, at the very least, that puts you in fighting range. Now, there's signatures that are much, much bigger that can then be gated behind, you know, 1 million qubits, 10 million qubits, etc. But every time you take that step up. And so to me, it's either you have to plan on being encrypted on every end on a blockchain that is able to take both data storage, you have to have a financial storage, you have to have password security, and then you have to have 2FAs to even get into these signature keys and these rotating QPCs that largely have to exist in person. I mean, for lack of a better term, almost a SCIF, right? You need to have this environment that is incredibly secure, that is a hard line to the internet, that, you know, that's the way to guarantee security. And I think a lot of people aren't close to that yet, which means that I think for someone that has done zero quantum proofing, the answer right now is you need to prepare for both worlds. One where you get your quantum upgrade done in time, and the other where you might have a complete rollback into like 1980s business, 1970s business. And what does that look like?
Filing cabinet.
You mean? Yeah. See, you know, it is a reality is, you know, no one might have access to their emails. Google Drives could be completely down for you. You might not have access to your Azure, your AWS, you could have zero access. And how many people have even printed off their internal documents once at this? Like, I mean, we talk to startups that have no money for these kind of upgrades. Like, it's exactly that. It's like, you know, I make sure that every document we generate, I literally have a file cabinet sitting right next to me that's filled with, you know, thousands of pages of paper. But it's that way, at least if worst case happens, I can rescan these things and I still have access to all the stuff we've done.
Right. I think the other challenge, and I mean, just brainstorm with you, is the cross relationship with your customers, your clients, your partners have to be at the same level, especially when you're doing communication. If you're doing your own storage and data, that's fine. You can have your own isolated environment doing quantum. But if you're trying to do communication and it's not at the same level, you're not using the same protocol, you know, you're going to have issues.
And I think this has been probably our toughest part about building, and what's both risen our costs, but also you know, I'm sure my engineers roll their eyes at me constantly, but I'm always there to remind them, it's exactly that. Your weakest point of failure is going to be where you're exploited. So for us, we're building a global blockchain settlement system that interacts with central banks, regular banks. It interacts with DIDs, interacts with other blockchains. And so we have to basically provide at every endpoint, whether it's an SDK, an API, a bridge, etc., a quantum wrapper into each spot.
Right.
We have to be prepared to reject transactions when we know it's a bad actor. We have to be prepared to know that our cloud infrastructure that hosts our entire blockchain is going to be under attack. So, okay, it is, you know, which cloud provider is already upgrading itself, is already running with the best security, which wallet providers, if any, are quantum resistant themselves today, which exchanges are ready. And like, you basically have to evaluate your model off of, you know, today we're supporting everybody, but if Q Day happens, all of a sudden we might only be able to run our internal builds and everything that we've custom built. And so for us, we've started to build a lot of things from scratch where I think everybody else has always taken a partner. But the only way I can tell a government trust us is, hey, we actually control everything.
Right.
You know, if this happens, we are the point person. We are that decision matrix to say, can we upgrade and improve this overnight?
Right. But like I said, I think the challenge is, like you said, your lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
We know big organizations, government, and also banks can move slower, right? They're not as fast to go to the innovation. And I get it, because it's the analogy of, a big ship.
Well,
Right?
it's also the cost is like, for a startup like us to build everything quantum resistant day one is pretty easy.
Right.
For Google or Amazon to upgrade their packets to have a quantum encryption on every packet that's pushed, that's going to be really, really expensive. And we're talking tripling to quadrupling, in many cases, the entire server cost load. Mm-hmm. And so that's now all of a sudden you're fundamentally changing business mindsets. You're changing how business is done, and you really have to reapproach in a way that I don't think many people are prepared. And so, like, I think you're going to see a lot of the big providers, not that they weren't ready or not prepared for it, but more so that they're going to wait till the absolute last minute to flip the switch, because it represents such a fundamental business switch.
Well, like you said, there's going to be a cost. There's going to be management and supporting the infrastructure to be able to maintain that. Like, I'll agree with you. Like the extensive costs, right? Resources, technology, servers, things like that. The bandwidth, right? The network bandwidth on top of that, like all that. But then you look at Google. If they do that, how many people do they impact of their customers that don't have that? You and I were laughing on, like, my MacBook Pro is a little bit older, but imagine they did that to me tomorrow.
Yep.
And my MacBook Pro couldn't support that. Well, now I'm not able to, and I don't use Gmail, but we'll say I was using that. I couldn't get into that because now I can't have it because my system doesn't support it. Well, now I'm dead in the water when it comes to email.
We're getting into, it's like even Moore's law with the principle of how fast like things go, right? It's going to be, we're going to see NVIDIA chips that are 2 years old not be able to support the weight load, right? We're going to see entire cloud server farms go down, right? Because that overload and the overheating and just the immediate storage switch. And you're going to have all the load management. And then you also have all the personal devices. And then on top of that, you have bandwidth. And that's all of a sudden we're going to be sending 3 to 4 times the amount of bandwidth, just like that globally. Yeah. We're not prepared to support that. I mean, it's, I live in a 30-story building, and you see on this call that my internet randomly goes out at 5:40. Why is that? It's because everyone's turning on Netflix right now, right? Like, right. We still have these problems in Miami. We're going to have these problems globally at scales you can't even imagine. I mean, think about Africa, think about the Middle East, think about Southeast Asia, where internet is still rather new to a lot of areas.
Right.
Their internets don't have fiber. They don't have the ability to send that much bandwidth. And so all of a sudden they're still equally exposed to bad actors because they just simply can't upgrade. And so there has to be hybrid models, and there has to be, and I think the race right now is how do we support that second layer of tech users, the people that aren't going to be on the fastest Wi-Fi, fastest internet, fastest servers, et cetera.
Right. And to incorporate that cost into their budget, like you're talking about. Like, it's not like, hey, here's your upgrade, it's $20,000 a year, okay, you're good. Some of them with the infrastructure and global organizations, we're talking millions, tens of millions of dollars, right? With multiple locations, servers, and they're looking the bandwidth, the internet, their applications, all that's going to have to be upgraded. And some of them have custom code and custom applications.
Well, and the other side of this too is, I mean, we're in an era where the mega corporations are more focused on the shareholder value, right? Which means they have every incentive right now to push kick this can down the road as much as possible.
Right.
For the bank to upgrade it. I mean, I've run some numbers with some large bank institutions. It's often 100 million plus.
Right.
It's every single terminal has to be upgraded. Right. And I mean, it can range even into the billions of dollars for, I mean, I can't even imagine what an Amazon or a Zura would look like. Right. And that's really hard, because you have a financial incentive to do the opposite of the right thing right now.
Right.
Even though we all know eventually it's coming downstream.
Well, the other thing too is the point of this, and just again thinking out loud, is the hardware on the common enterprise level environment doesn't support currently a quantum. So if they flip the switch, then the servers don't support the hardware. Now you're going to have a flux of now purchasing hardware to get it support. I remember the Y2K. Oh my God, the clocks are not going to turn over, and all this hardware and software and that. I'm seeing that now, even with our challenges of, monitors, laptops, all that, and the procurement of it. I was talking to organizations doing a refresh, and it's taking them anywhere from 60 days to 90 days to get hardware in as they're doing a refresh. Now, imagine now they have to refresh everything again.
Yep. Everything all at once. I mean, and then you even have there's a scarier, and I won't claim to be technically sufficient enough in all the coding reasons why this happens, but when you actually run what quantum computers are capable of,
Right.
it breaks every C++ based language.
Okay.
Because they're able to simultaneously go at both sides, right? That's the whole point of quantum. It goes after A, it goes after B, it goes after 0, it goes after 1. And so all of a sudden, it's just a code level.
Right.
You're able to create layer like 0-day attacks into the code off of the fact that you can just break the way it's communicated. And that's going to be kind of the next stage too, is like, how do we upgrade our programming languages to be able to, you know, strengthen and secure and even just beyond the data layer transference. And like, I have a feeling you're going to see a lot more locally hosted servers and things like that, because you just want things that aren't online. You want things that can only be accessed in your office location, things like that. And I think that's the next steps. And it's a world, I think, you know, it's funny enough, is in 2005, we were better prepared for Q-Day than we are today. And that's a effect of cloud compute and how cheap it got.
Well, I think the one thing that we were seeing, and over the last, say, 5 years, more organizations was going to cloud because it was more infrastructure service, platform as a software as a service. Okay, we can get up in the infrastructure, less management, less resorts. They have the hardware. We're good. They can support everything. You know, it's a little bit more cost effective, but we have to look at scalability and bandwidth. But like you said, for security now, it's like, okay, hold on. Now we got to bring it back in house.
Yep. No, I mean, I think that's the terrifying reality that we sit in today. Right. Is how do you handle that? Yeah, you don't is the answer right now. And it's we've talked to a lot of really, really great, smart people and some of the best quantum researchers. And, you know, there's always a person that's willing to sell you the snake oil saying, I have the fix. But until the event happens, do you really have it?
Right. Oh, true. Now, I know we're coming up on time. Any closing takeaways, any thoughts, any recommendations for anyone that's kind of watching this right now? I know we covered a lot of information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think kind of I would say to everybody is that you should start thinking about, if you're in crypto, how do you get around ridges and who's building it? I mean, right now, quite frankly, there is one, and it's me. The other side of it, though, is, you know, the quantum is there's a lot of people building, but it is, are you already working with them? Are you already talking to them? There's multitudes of ways to increase your quantum resistance, increase your data security, et cetera. And even more importantly is, I think you have to change what you think vulnerabilities are. Data is king now, inferencing and things like that. It's not even just the financials you have to be worried about. It is your consumer information. It is your data. It's the entire way your organization is structured. Every document that's ever been created is now valuable to AI. And so I think that's where, for everybody, it's just start having the conversations today, not tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now, and really start to rethink your entire organizational structure.
So what would be 3 questions you'd want to ask a partner to validate that they have a grounding in the solution that you need to, because again, like you said, there's guys that are talking about, so I almost think as a marketing term, we have next generation, we have AI solutions and we can do that. But when you talk to them, they don't got it. They're trying to figure it out too.
So, I mean, I think it's hard now because AI has given everybody just enough words to be able to sound smart enough in the first few meetings. But the first and foremost thing I think it is, for anything that's blockchain or signature based, is what signature field do you currently have deployed? Not plan to have deployed, but currently have deployed. Everybody in the ecosystem now says that they're going to crystal lithium signatures. That said, is most of these chains can't support the increased block size, or it's going to cost triple to send a message between them, right? The second side is, you know, I think it's what is your internal policies? Are you cloud service providers, things like that? What does this actually look like when things hit the fan? And like, how are we protected from our external auditors? And then the third, and I think the question to ask just in general is, you know, okay, great, why are you the expert?
Right.
You know, it's like, for us, we get these questions a lot, and it's really easy. Is, you know, hey, I've been investing in quantum for the last 5 years. Now, on top of that, though, is I've hired people from the places I've invested in, the smarter people, to come in and reverse engineer. And we've done the math, and we have, you know, a white paper that has 80 pages of proofs of why the math works with certain quantum levels and how it operates. You can plug that into ChatGPT at this point, and it's gonna tell you relatively quickly, is the math gonna make sense?
Right.
You don't need to understand it yourself, but you need to make sure that you're checking to make sure that that person understands it in the first place.
And then the one thing to add to what Ryan's saying is that if you guys are looking at this, sign an NDA with that partner, ask them to have like some referrals and people they work with that are valid companies and organizations that they worked with, that you can kind of validate, okay, is that person working with bank ABC? And then you have that talk and conversation. Again, they're not going to release too much information, but you can say, look, have they worked with it? Has a project been executed? Do you find success? What are some of your challenges that you've gone through? And then at least validate, okay, they're running some challenges, but at least those are acceptable challenges. But they are moving forward and where I need to get to, and they're the right partner versus, sorry, who are you talking about? Who's Ryan? What is he doing?
Right. And it's also, I think one of the things I always say is like, this is actually one of the ones where anyone who's like, oh, we're quantum secure, don't worry.
Right.
That's the biggest red flag in the space.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows quantum right now is going to be talking about, well, how successful is this quantum computer?
Right.
How many qubits is it actually achieve? Because at our best guesses, there's a world in which we achieve 100 million qubits that can simultaneously run in a quantum computer. I don't think there's anyone that's found a way to be secure in that environment. And hey, you know, I always like that. I always like the vendors who are honest and say, yes, there's vulnerabilities to even what we do, and we know where they sit.
Right. Which is awesome. Now, anyone watching this or listening to this, you can connect with Ryan on LinkedIn. Check out my YouTube video. Check out where he is. You can see the link here. It's linkedin.com/in/Ryan Kirkley. Check him out. Reach out. Ryan's an amazing guy to learn from. And then if you want to connect to his company, his organization, globalsettlement.com. Ryan, thank you so much. This was amazing. I know we covered a lot of great information. I think the one thing I found too is I think we've started to go to the future of technology and solutions again, where people are not comfortable yet. People you're working with, I'm starting to see that too. They're starting to get there, but it's like that. It's that trickle effect. Yeah, I know I should be there, but I don't know if it's right now. I don't have the budget. I don't have the people, the resources, the time, things along that line. So I think this conversation is going to help people move that needle this year.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
So great conversation, Ryan. I know we covered a lot of information. Guys, re-watch this episode, re-listen to it, going over and over again. Ryan covered a lot of great information when it comes to AI, quantum, what you need to know about how you're going to at least roadmap and strategize your quantum journey this year, right? What does that look like? What do you need to look at? And then reach out to people like Ryan to say, okay, look, I'm thinking this. Here's my roadmap. Can you do like just a brainstorming session, you know, pay for Ryan's time, whatever that may be, because experts like this is going to drive you to a successful roadmap to get you to that next step where you're actually implementing the right controls, the right quantum solutions, the right processes that you need to help you stay protected, because you don't want to go down that road and find out that wasn't the solution I need, that wasn't the technology, it's not going to work. It's not going to work to where I want to get to. And experts like Ryan are the ones that are innovators. They're looking at, you know, even like I would say they're disrupting the industry and what they're doing. So reach out to Ryan, get some information. He's an amazing guy. I learned a lot from him today. And like I said, keep watching this. So thank you so much for watching Daily Cyber and listening to it. Don't forget, software's hackle, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.